5 Marriage and Mingling of the Lights. We complete the first 3 parts of the marriage ceremony, and I experience the incredible joy of the union. April 1977, Nibiru. It was a joyful day. My reunion with Miriam's daughters brought me much happiness, and this time, I met Miriam's husband, who was on a mission during my entire 9 months of pregnancy. Sinha in Madak was a very pleasant person, and he welcomed me heartily on my return to Nibiru. Of course, Sinha in Anashamra came to see me, and we were overjoyed to meet again. She promised that now I could see, study, and enjoy everything that was in her power to give at the academy. And I was thrilled with the potential future studies. Yes, this was a very happy day, and yet, something very strange happened at the end of the day. After a festive dinner, which included many guests, Madak got up with the rest of the guests and left me at Miriam's place. I could not quite understand it, and to be honest, was extremely distressed about what seemed to me like abandonment. I simply had to understand this. So when the girls retired, and Sinha in Madak went to the library to prepare for something he needed the next day, I decided to consult Miriam. "Miriam, what is going on? Has Madak changed his mind about marrying me?" "Of course not. What would make you imagine such a horror? He has made his choice. It's final for him." "Well, he just got up, said goodnight, and left me in your house. Not that I object to being with you, you know how much I love all of you, but I imagined I would be living in his house. Since we are getting married." "No, of course you can't live in his house. You are not married yet." "I see, so why doesn't he mention it? Shouldn't we make some arrangements, do something?" Miriam laughed. "You know, my dear, my brother is a lovable creature, but sometimes he forgets that humans don't know everything we do and have no clue to our traditions. Why he assumes you understand it all is beyond me, but that is Sinha Madushk all over. He has made all the arrangements, Victoria. He had plenty to do, even to persuade the council, show them you were of age, even though you are only 30. Only 30? Women marry at a much earlier age on Earth. But the council is rather rigid, and they have their code. You must remember that you are a child, on Nibiru, until you are 71 years old." "What? He won't marry me for 41 years? Are you all mad? No, you are to be married right away with your permission," and he talked the council into everything he wanted. Sinha Madush can be quite persuasive, and all is arranged. Why does he assume that you know everything? I could not say. As for me, I said nothing because I thought he explained. "So, what are we waiting for?" "We are waiting for tomorrow, when he is going to present you with a formal proposal." Heavens, how rigid your traditions, rules and regulations are. I suppose it is because you are such an ancient race. But also he seemed apprehensive. If an Anunnaki can be said be nervous. What is it? He did not exactly explain to me, but I suspect he is indeed apprehensive. He is probably not sure if you know how we are constructed, physically, and what our marriages are really like. I mean, of course you know about the union, the mingling of lights, but are you aware that Anunnaki do not have sex organs like humans? Of course I am aware of it. I saw a whole lot of little children swimming in the ponds when you took me to our swimming trips. I know exactly how you are constructed physically. Well, does it bother you? Why should it? Miriam, the night before I left, your brother gave me a tiny sample of the mingling of lights. Nothing much, we just held hands and kept apart when he activated our lights, so it involved only the hands. That was all he thought would be appropriate and fair to my free will. So I respected that, but let me tell you, this slight touch was better, a million light years better, than any sexual activity we have on Earth. So it would not hurt you in any way that as the centuries go by, and you become more and more an Anunnaki, you will lose the sex organs? I would not bat an eyelash. You know, Victoria, I believe that your Anunnaki genes influence you considerably already. Quite possibly. Also, you must understand that single women in my world usually experiment with sex from their late teens and on. I had a couple of experiences in my 20s. Well, I must say, I am glad Sinha Madak is too ethical to have spied on you. He would not have enjoyed these experiments, I suspect. He might have been made rather happy about them, Miriam. They were nothing to me. Something inside me retained the memory of the mingling of lights with Madak, because I really did not like any of these men or what they tried to give me. Sex, as I told an old Earth friend just before you brought me here again, is highly overrated. After experiencing the mingling of the lights, it is a minor thing indeed, a mere physical sensation at best. I don't have to tell you that the mingling of lights involves mind, body and soul. Just don't tell that to Madak. He might feel I needed 30 more years to make sure my free will is intact, and I am not waiting to be 60 before I marry. Since I have never experienced sex in the Earth way, or ever had sex organs, of course I can't tell the difference. The mingling of lights to me is highly spiritual. But do you know, Victoria, that your species is the only humanoid one in the known universes that has sex organs, which were given to you to match the animals and the plants on your planet? I personally think it was a mistake. It deprived you of true unity with your mates and created much frustration. No other species share this aberration. Anyway, I am so glad you feel this way, Victoria. I have looked upon you as my sister from the moment you came here the first time, and I would not want to lose you to the Earthlings. You never will. I will grow and become more Anunnaki every day, and I too see you as my sister. I am so very happy about it. All of us love you, Victoria. I will always stay with you. And now that you explained Madak's bizarre behavior, I will not fret, and I will be as formal as any Anunnaki when he comes to take me to the library. But Miriam, there is something else on my mind. What is it? Did you know Madak's previous wife? No, of course not. She is in another universe which he has left. I see the problem, but Victoria, don't let such human concerns distress you. She is not his previous wife. She is married to another version, not to the Sinha Madak, you know. This business of multiple universes and duplicate versions is quite confusing. I know. We spend years in school trying to internalize the concept. I wish I understood it better. There must be some master version, the one from which all the other versions are copied, right? Exactly. You understand it better than you think, but we never meet the master version, only the copies. And Madak can remember his other versions, but he is separate from them. Right again. And they become remote after a while, each pursuing his or her own destiny and mission. Everyone has a mission, or a life work. Will I be given one too? All in good time. First the marriage, then a fabulous wedding trip, then plenty of time to settle down with your husband, your new home, your extended family. When you are ready you will know, and then you shall meet with the council representatives, and choose your mission. Choose? So it is not simply assigned? Assigned? Of course not. You are only asked to do what is a deep wish in your heart already. They will just help it develop and blossom. With us, Victoria, free will is everything. There is no exception to this rule, ever. Indeed, I can accept that. Madak is simply obsessed with it. I still can't get over the fact that he was willing to risk losing me because of it. That is almost frightening. Miriam laughed. Well, don't worry about it. True tradition and free will are extremely important to him, but I am sure he will relax as soon as you are married and resume his lovable, if sometimes annoying, self. In the morning Madak came. I was in the garden, waiting for him, while everyone else was still in their rooms. The morning was beautiful. Butterflies fluttered in the dense flower beds, and every tree was full of singing birds. The roses were blooming so intensely that their scent was incredibly strong. I felt that the occasion meant a lot to both of us, even if I had no idea what was to take place, so I dressed in a semi-formal fashion, and wore a long cream-colored dress with a beautiful red belt. Madak seemed to have had the same thoughts, since he, too, wore something that seemed more afternoon than morning to me. He was glad to see me up already, and asked me to come to the library. Inside, he approached a shelf, but instead of taking one of the usual conical books, He removed an ancient wooden box and brought it to one of the tables. Inside was a scroll that seemed ancient, probably hundreds, if not thousands of years old. "Is this Egyptian papyrus?" I asked. "Yes, it is. A few thousand years ago we had to copy the original manuscript. It lasted for eons, but finally it was beginning to crumble. We decided we wanted to make an exact replica, since it was so beautiful, rather than reproduce it on a cone, as many families do. It was truly beautiful, written in a language I could not understand and illuminated with small, magical pictures, many of them seemingly some kind of symbols. I longed to touch it and see what the texture was, but I did not dare to do so. This is our marriage record book where all our marriages are kept. Now is the time to make your final decision, Victoria, if you can. Will you marry me?" "Of course I will," I said, surprised. "Did you have any doubts about it?" "I have to ask you formally no matter what I think. It is part of the ceremony." "Madak, I know nothing about it. Would you please explain to me what the ceremony is all about?" "It has 4 parts. The first is a verbal consent and a statement of free will. The second is signing the marriage record. The third is the mingling of the lights. The fourth is a conclusive ceremony officiated by 3 representatives of the council." "And a party? With beautiful dresses and music and food?" Madak laughed. "Of course," he said. "Right after the ceremony. Then let's get on with it, Madak. It's not all solemnity, you know, we should have some fun." Madak smiled. "Indeed," he said. "We shall now continue then. Let's start again. Will you marry me?" "Yes, I will marry you, Madak." "Are you certain and ready to sign this book?" "I am certain. Can you see, imagine, visualize, or even fantasize any other option than our marriage?" "No, I cannot. And do you realize that once you sign this book, our union is irrevocable?" "I realize that. Is anything other than complete free will is at all employed in your consent? Was any form of persuasion, coercion, promises, or any other such behavior employed on my part?" "There is only free will." Madak unrolled the scroll and picked up a writing implement from the table. It was shaped like a pen, but from previous experience, I knew it worked with energy, not ink. Nothing could erase it, ever. Under a text paragraph, he signed his name in the Anunnaki language. He then handed me the pen, and I signed my name, in plain English. To my surprise, each of our signatures, though done by the same pen, had a different color, and what's more, under my English signature appeared what seemed to be a translation into Anunnaki. But it kept my signature's color. "Are we married now?" I asked. "Yes, we are. For eternity." He seemed suddenly relaxed. "And then, can I move to your house? Or do I stay at Miriam's house like a nice little virgin until the council blesses me?" "No, you move to my house. It is now your house. We are married." "It's about time," I said, and we both laughed. Everyone congratulated us when we came back to Miriam's living room. They were all there, waiting for us. "And now we must take your things to your home," said Miriam, after a good breakfast, where everyone was relaxed, happy, and full of plans. "Would you believe your husband would not allow me to take your dresses, all the accessories my daughters designed, shoes, and all the jewelry, until after the marriage was accomplished? I knew you will stay, but he just won't allow it, tiresomely refereeing again to free will. But we will try to forget his annoying ways. We will take everything now, or teleport it rather, into your closets. Come see all the stuff." "He does stick to tradition," I said, following her out of the room. "Ah, well," said Miriam with resignation. "We must accept the fact that all over the known universes, the female of the species is more realistic." Madak heard us and laughed. "Very true," he said. "Wait 1 second, Victoria. Once the ceremony and celebrations are all over, where would you like to go for our wedding trip?" "Why, Paris, of course," I said. "Where else would one go for a honeymoon?" "What a charming idea," said Miriam. "I was thinking about a planet on the Alpha Centauri system where so many people go for their wedding trips, but Paris will be very nice." The wardrobe they prepared for me was so incredible, I had to gasp. Closet after closet, full with the most beautiful gowns for all occasions, from casual to formal. Entire shelves full of shoes in all colors, accessories that were everything from hair decorations to belts and scarves, and jewelry that can only be described as breathtaking. Later, we must decide on the wedding dress, said Miriam. I have about 6 or 7 for you to choose from. After I could finally manage to tear myself away from the enchanting wardrobe, everything was quickly teleported without the slightest physical effort. And finally, Miriam and Madak took me to my new home to get settled. Madak's home, which, as I have explained before, was attached with a corridor to his sister's home, was just as beautiful and comfortable as Miriam's. I remembered it from my last visit, since of course I have seen it many times, but it turned out that the brother and sister decided to change everything and make it perfect for a new bride, more elegant, less masculine. The theme they decided upon was an indoor garden. The living room retained the structure of smooth levels, and high ceiling of course, but it was now filled to the brim with indoor roses, both bushes and trailing. And parts of the floor grew the softest, greenest grass where previously they were covered with carpets. Other trailing and hanging flowering plants undulated with the soft breeze that came from the opened windows, making the room look like a miniature magical forest. Tiny ponds, surrounded with ferns and supporting water lilies, were on every level, and miniature waterfalls twinkled delicately as they softly fell into the ponds. Tall willow, like trees and bamboo, grew behind the furniture. The couches were all covered with green and gold silk, and the red hibiscus flowers here and there completed the enchanting color scheme. This was the most beautiful room I have ever seen. The dining room, the guest rooms, the bedrooms all followed the garden idea. Each guest room was decorated with a different flower theme, one of them all lilies of the valley-like flowers, another one like an orchard of flowering plums and almonds. The bathrooms were small rainforests. Our bedroom was zen-like, with the bed in the middle and a few trees behind it and before it. A couple of small tables had each a vase with one white lily, and all the storage for clothes and beddings was hidden behind wooden screens. One large pond with papyrus growing right in it was placed in a corner and was surrounded with grey, moss-covered rocks. It was a place of serenity and peace. As Miriam and Madak were conducting the tour of the house, I simply could not stop admiring and exclaiming over everything. It felt to me like something of a childhood's dream or fairy tale. "I am so happy you like it," said Miriam. "After you live in it for a while, you may want some changes. Some things to make it more comfortable or more suitable for your personal taste. Nothing will be easier. You will tell me, and I'll teach you how to manipulate objects with your mind." "For the moment, I don't want to even think of changes," I said enthusiastically. "What a place. And now I must go and let you settle. Come for lunch tomorrow, and we'll choose the dress." She left, and Madak and I were left in our home, finally married and alone in this green paradise. We were now free to bring about our union and mingle our lights. Madak stood up and said most formally, "Victoria, would you do me the honor of accomplishing our union? This will be the 3rd part of our marriage." Tears came into my eyes. "Do you the honor, Madak?" "No, you are doing me the honor. You and your family who accepted me as one of them. And the council who is willing to bless our marriage despite the fact that I am truly a member of an inferior species. I am honored. You are not an inferior, Victoria. You are one of us in every way. You have been brought up on Earth, and that changed a few things but nothing fundamental. Your genetic makeup is ours, and most important, your spirit and your soul is ours, and the council will prove it to you by honoring you during the wedding ceremony, by giving you your very own Anunnaki name. The greatest honor is your wanting to marry me, Madak, waiting for me and allowing me the centuries of learning and growing to be like you. And to answer your question, in the formal style that is needed, yes, I will now happily come with you and accomplish our union. There are certain things that cannot be described, things that human language has no words for, and I am afraid that the mingling of the lights is one of them. I can describe the physical procedure, and unlike human sexual behavior, there is nothing in the union that is embarrassing or disturbing to even the most traditional and old-fashioned people. But the experience itself is impossible to relate. We went into our bedroom, which traditionally had no windows. That is because it is not seemly to have the lights, which can be intense, be seen by people who may be walking in the gardens. We sat on the bed, and I said to Madak, "I have no idea how the lights are to be activated." "You don't have to do anything, since the lights are not activated. They emanate from our beings, and just sitting here together will do it. Do you remember how the light grew around our hands just before you left?" "Of course I do," I said. I did not want to add that the experience lived in my mind, if unconsciously so, enough to make me come back to him. So I kept it to myself and smiled inwardly with complete happiness. "Just sit near me, Victoria, close your eyes and imagine the same light emanating from your entire body." I did as he said, and imagined golden light surrounding me like a soft, flowing veil. For a few minutes nothing happened. And then I felt a change and opened my eyes to see each of us surrounded by a bubble of the most brilliant light. The bubbles came together, touched each other exactly like floating soap bubbles do, and merged together into one glowing orb. The light grew stronger and stronger until the whole room was illuminated by undulating, flowing strands of light, a little like the strands that can be seen in the sky during the aurora borealis. And the sensations I felt were the incarnation of beauty, at once mental, physical, and spiritual, since it cannot be anything but a combination of the three. And it mounted and increased until the light exploded into a shower of stars and the union was achieved. And that is all I can really say, because as I said, human language is too limited. In Anunnaki there are many words to describe the union in all its aspects. I do want you to understand though, I am doing my best. So if you can recall the most wonderful sexual experience you ever had, with someone for whom you had pure love and respect, perhaps you may have an inkling, but only that. I suspect that until humans evolve mentally, spiritually, and physically, until such time as they can shed all the negative traits of infidelity, jealousy, and fickleness, all they can have is a pale imitation of the union. I hope that someday it will happen, because the union, unlike human sexual relations, can only ennoble and enrich you, can never be negative, can never cause pain or embarrassment. It is the essence of purity and happiness. After all was over, and we were resting on our bed, I told Madak that I remember smelling the scent of a certain flower I knew from my childhood, which grew only in the hothouses. Madak was sure it was part of the experience, and tried to understand which flower it was. But I forgot the name, and could not describe it to him adequately. So Madak smiled and said, "Well, make a shower of these flowers fall on us." "Make a shower of flowers? Me? How do I do that? Don't you forget I am a mere human? Having gone through the union already started you on developing special powers. Just close your eyes, and imagine the flowers as you remember them, falling on us like a steady rain from the ceiling. Make heaps and heaps of them." I laughed at the idea, but to indulge him, I closed my eyes and imagined the flowers doing that. Suddenly I felt something landing on me softly, like a snowflake. I opened my eyes, and to my total amazement I saw a few flowers falling from the ceiling. White and yellow and smelling like an earthly paradise, the rain of flowers got thicker and thicker, and they covered us with their scented petals. I was speechless with amazement at my new gifts and the impossibility of what I was creating. But Madak just picked up one flower and said in a total matter of fact way, as if no miracle had been taking place, "Oh, I see, plumeria. Of course. I should have recognized them from your description. They grow here all over the place." I laughed. "What next?" I said. "Will I fly to one of the moons on my own silver wings?" Madak looked at me seriously and said, "Sure, if you like. There are no limits, really. Wings are easy enough to make any color you want." What a place, I thought. What a life. and I sank into a blissful sleep under the soft and warm blanket of the delicate while and yellow flowers. The unthinkable horrors how I was taught the truth about alien abductions, saw a monstrous experiment, viewed a non-physical demonic dimension, and visited the horrific laboratory of the Greys. We were going to our wedding trip in Paris in a few days. Madak had some business with the council regarding a new assignment which he planned to work on after our return. So I had a few days to settle down and prepare for the trip. But there was nothing to prepare really, since everything was ready, packed and arranged in the spaceship in a few minutes. Therefore, I decided to take Sinha Inanna Shamra at her word and make a little visit to the academy. I asked her if it were convenient while she was having dinner with us one evening, and she was delighted to oblige. The next morning, I went to the academy. It was a huge, sprawling complex of buildings, all of them connected in the traditional Anunnaki architecture, and when I first saw it, during my previous visit, I remember thinking how amusing it was that even on another planet, places of higher education had the same look as our own universities. The grey stones, the ivy-like climbers, the winding walks among ancient trees. You simply could not mistake it for anything else but a place of learning. Sinha Inanna Shamra took me to her own office, which was a very pleasant library with thousands of conical books and desks cluttered with more cones and ancient manuscripts. The light that filtered through the climbers by the windows tinted the air with green, and soft armchairs made you wish you could settle for a good reading session that would last for hours. Sinha Inanna Shamra was pleased with my admiration of her place. "Yes, I love working here," she said. "I cannot imagine myself working anywhere else. I have been here for ages, ever since I have decided on my mission." Which in my case was teaching future generations about the history of the Anunnaki and its relationship to the universe. And the more I teach, the more I learn, and the more I realize how infinite is the field. Which brings me to a question I really wanted to ask you but did not think yesterday that it was a topic for a dinner conversation. Did you devote some thoughts to your own future mission? "Not really," I said, a little embarrassed. Miriam said I should not rush into it. She suggested I concentrate on the 4 parts of the ceremony, then the trip, then settle down for a while, and only then start thinking about it. "Oh, of course there is no rush whatsoever," said Sinha Inanna Shamra. "I was thinking about it merely because if you have something in mind, I would start your studies by introducing you to it, rather than go randomly at various subjects." "Well," I said, considering, "I know one thing. I am a beginner, a stranger, and rather young. I don't think I would do very well with species I am not familiar with, and I don't think I can feel comfortable, at this stage, with changing. In addition, I have a very strong interest in the fate of the hybrid children on Earth, considering that this was what I was asked to do when I had just started my relationship with the Anunnaki. Do you think then that you may be willing to work with the hybrid issue? Some of it is very nice, like your situation, because the Anunnaki treat the people they contact with utmost respect. But other species are not exactly like that. Some of it is even gruesome. I think I can only make such a decision if I am to know what really happens with the hybrids," I said. "Even if it is gruesome, I am aware that not everything I will encounter in my life here is wine and roses, even though it sometimes does seem like a paradise." "You display an excellent attitude," said Sinha Inanna Shamra. "I am sure that if I show and tell you a few things, you will have a better base on which to form an idea and eventually to make a decision. The first thing we must talk about is the situation with the Greys. The small extraterrestrials with the bug eyes, right?" I said. "Yes. They do not contact people like we do on your planet. They abduct them. You are probably familiar with many stories that come from the people that they have abducted. But much of what these people say is inaccurate and based upon mind control that the Greys exercise on them. I am going to tell you a bit, and then, if you feel up to it, we will take a short trip on my spaceship and visit one of their labs. Would they let you in? Aren't they dangerous?" "Dangerous? Very. But not to an Anunnaki. We are much stronger and they are afraid of us. If I come to their place and demand to see a lab, I will see a lab. In addition, I want to show you a few things on a monitor. Some will be extremely unpleasant, but it cannot be avoided if you want to learn something. What do they want of us on Earth? There are a few things that they want. First, they want eggs from human women and use them to create hybrids. Let's take a look at this monitor and I'll show you how they do that. But Victoria, steel yourself. This is pretty horrible, even though I have seen even worse. You will also be able to hear, it is like a television. The monitor blinked and buzzed, and a small white dot appeared on the screen. It enlarged itself, moved back and forth, and settled into a window, like view of a huge room, but the view was still rather fuzzy. I heard horrendous screams and froze in my seat. These were sounds I have never heard before. After a few minutes the view cleared, and I saw what seemed to be a hospital room. But it was elliptical, not square. Only part of it was revealed, as it was elongated, and the far edge was not visible. The walls on the side were moving back and forth, like some kind of a balloon that was being inflated and deflated periodically. With a motion that made me dizzy, they seemed sticky, even gooey. The room was full of operation tables, of which I could see perhaps 40 or 50, on which were stretched human beings, each attached to the table unable to move, but obviously not sedated, since they were screaming or moaning. Everyone was attached to tubes, into which blood was pouring in huge quantities. I noticed that some of the blood was turning into a filthy green color, like rotting vegetation. At the time I could not understand what that was, but later that day I found out. This blood was converted to a suitable type for some of the aliens that paid the Greys to collect it, and it was not useful in its raw condition. The creatures who operated these experiments were small and grey, and they had big bug eyes and pointy faces without any expression. I thought they looked more like insects than like a humanoid species. They wore no clothes, and their skin was shiny and moist, like that of an amphibian on Earth. It visibly exuded beads of moisture, which they did not bother to wipe away. Each operating table had complicated machinery that was poised right on top of the person who was strapped to it. On some of the tables, the machinery was lowered so that needles could be extracted from them automatically, and the needles reached every part of the human bodies: faces, eyes, ears, genitals, stomach. The people screamed as they saw the needles approaching them. Some of them fainted. Many of the people were already dead, I could swear to that. Others were still alive but barely so, and some had arms and legs amputated from their bodies. It was clear that once the experiment was over, every single person there would die. I don't know how I could continue to look, but somehow I managed. I looked at the ceiling of this slaughterhouse and saw meat hooks, on which arms and legs and even heads were hanging, like a butcher's warehouse. On the side of the tables were large glass tanks where some organs were placed, possibly hearts, livers or lungs, all preserved in liquids. The workers seemed to be doing their job dispassionately, and without any feelings, moving around like ants and making buzzing sounds at each other as they conversed. They were entirely business-like and devoid of emotion. At least their huge bug eyes did not convey any emotion to me, neither did their expressionless faces. I watched until I could no longer tolerate it, and finally covered my eyes and cried out, "Why don't you stop it? Why don't you interfere?" Sinha Inanashamra turned the monitor off. This event is a record from decades ago, Victoria. It is not happening now as we look. And even though often we do interfere, we cannot police the entire universe or even the entire Earth. They know how to hide from us, and you must understand that often the victims cooperate with their abductors. Why would they? Basically through mind control. The Greys have many ways to convince the victims. The Greys can enter the human mind quite easily, and they find what the abductees are feeling and thinking about various subjects. Then, they can either threaten them by various means, or persuade them by a promise of reward. Reward? What can they possibly offer? Well, you see, they show the victims images through a monitor, just like this one. They tell them that they can send them through a gate, which is controlled by the monitor, to any number of universes, both physical and non-physical. That is where the rewards come in. For example, if the abductees had originally reacted well to images of Mary or Jesus, the Greys can promise them the joy of the non-physical dimensions. They show them images of a place where Mary and Jesus reside, where all the saints or favorite prophets live, and even the abode of God. They promise the abductees that if they cooperate, they could live in this non-physical universe in perpetual happiness with their deities. Many fall for that, and if they resist, then they show them the non-physical alternative, which is hell. Would you like to see some of it? You can show me hell, I asked, amazed. No, there is no such thing as hell. It's a myth that religions often exploited. But I can show you what the Greys show the abductees, pretending it is hell. They are quite devious, you know. You see, some creatures live in different dimensions where our laws do not apply. Sometimes they escape to other dimensions. These beings have no substance in their new dimensions, and they need some kind of bodies to function. At the same time, the Greys can tap into numerous universes because they can control their own molecules to make them move and navigate through any dimension. Well, a cosmic trade had been developed. The Greys supply the substance taken from human abductees and from the blood of cattle. You must have heard of cattle mutilation, where carcasses of cows are found in the fields, entirely drained of blood. The Greys do it for their customers. How do these creatures pay the Greys? By various services. Once they get their substance, they are incredibly powerful in a physical sense. The old tales of genies who can lift buildings and fly with them through the air were based on these demons. The Greys often have a use for such services. But let me show you a few of these creatures. Of course, you can only see them when they have already acquired some substance from the Greys. The monitor hummed again as Sinha Inanna Shamra turned it on. The white dot expanded into its window, which now for some reason was larger, and took over the entire screen. All I could see was white fog with swirls floating through it. Sometimes the fog changed from white to grey, then to white again. I started hearing moans, not screams, nothing that suggested the kind of physical pain I saw before, but perhaps just as horrible, since their voices were those of hopelessness, despair, and emotional anguish. Every so often I heard a sound that suggested a banshee's wail, or keen, as described in Irish folklore. "It will take a while for someone to show up," said Sinha Inanna Shamra. "Most of them have no substance, and therefore they are invisible. Others have a shadowy substance. Then, there are the others. But you will see in a minute. Once they notice they are being watched, they will flock to the area, since they are desperate to get out. Incidentally, it was never made quite clear to me how they produce sounds without bodies. We are still trying to find out what the mechanics are, but it's not easy, because we would rather not go there in person." "They sound horribly sad," I said. "This is what makes it so hell-like. In many cultures, hell never had any fire and brimstone and tormenting devils, but rather, it was a place of acute loneliness, lack of substance, and alienation from anything that could sustain the individual from a spiritual point of view. Think of the Greek Hades, or the ancient Hebrew Sheol, before the Jews made their hell more like the Christian one. Look, here comes the first creature. Poor thing, he is a shadow." I saw a vaguely humanoid shape in deep grey. It seemed to have arms which it waved in our direction. It was fully aware of the monitor. Then another shadow, then another, all shoving each other and waving desperately at the monitor. Then something more substantial came into view, and I jumped back as if it could reach me. It seemed to be a severed arm. Cautiously, I came back, and then saw that the arm was attached to a shadow body. I looked at Sinha Inanna Shamra, speechless, and she said, "Yes, here you see one that managed to receive an arm. It wants to complete its body, of course, so that it can get out of this dimension and serve the Greys. But the Greys keep them waiting until they want them." More and more came, clamoring for attention. "Do they think we are Greys?" I asked. "Yes, they do. They can't tell the difference. All they know is that they are watched, and they try to get the attention of the watchers. It's incredibly cruel, but if you feel for them, which I still do, remember that at the same time they become murderous, cruel creatures themselves as soon as they escape their dimension and join the Greys. Another half-thing came into view. It had eyes stuck in the middle of a half-formed face, each eye different. The face seemed mutilated somehow, until I realized it had no nose and no chin. Floating heads, arms, legs, torsos, they all jostled in front of the monitor, each more horrible than the other. And then I saw the worst thing imaginable. Sinha Inanashamra. I screamed. This is a baby's head, a floating baby's head. What in the world it is attached to? Another shadow, said Sinha Inanashamra. They don't care what age the substance comes from. Sometime the baby's heads or limbs get attached to big adult bodies. They use babies, I said, sobbing. Babies. Yes, this is the kind of creatures we have to tolerate, said Sinha Inanashamra sadly. She looked at me and realized I could not take any more of this hell, and so turned off the monitor. This was something, I said, shivering and trying to recover. Indeed, said Sinha Inanashamra. So you see, they can easily show them horrific pictures of hell, enough to frighten them to such an extent that they are sure to obey. Interestingly, the abductees, under such threats, often develop physical psychosomatic effect in the form of scratches, burns, or even stigmata on parts of their bodies. Of course, sometimes the Greys burn them with laser beams as a form of punishment or of persuasion, and sometimes the wounds are produced simply by the radioactive rays emanating from the spaceship. Like what sometimes happens in nuclear plants on Earth or during nuclear explosions. But most often, it is the mind reacting to the image. How horrible, I said weakly. It gets worse, said Sinha Inanashamra. They can show them the physical universe as well. They would project, on screen, well-known events that occurred during times in which humanity was utterly cruel, or when war, famines, and plagues ravished the earth. They might show them the Crusades, or Attila the Hun, or the Nazi concentration camps, or the famine in Ireland, or the Black Plague in Europe, and threaten them that they can open a gate through the monitor and abandon them there for the rest of their lives. The poor things. No wonder they obey, I said. Yes, you see, the Anunnaki tell you the truth when they contact you. They let you know that they cannot change the past, nor can they interfere with the future. But the Greys lie. They tell the abductees that they can change events in the past, from day one, and that they could project and change life at 2, 5, or 10,000 years in the future of humanity. I wish you would just wipe them off the face of the universe, I said. We don't do such things. Some of us recommend it, but we just don't. Anyway, they have other systems of persuasion. Some women have a very strong reaction to the images of children. The Greys catch it, of course, and then they tell the women that they have been abducted before, years ago, and were impregnated by the Greys. Then they show them a hybrid child, and tell them that this is their own child. Many of the abductees who are thus psychologically influenced fall into a pathological attachment to the hybrid child. Then the Greys tell them that if they don't fully cooperate, they will take the child away. The woman cooperates, the experiment takes place. And then the Greys make them forget the child and place them back in their beds at home. Usually some vague memory remains, since the Greys don't care about the well-being of their victims and don't bother to check if the memory is completely cleaned out. But it is not really their child? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You must realize that normal impregnation and the 9 months of carrying the baby does not occur. The Greys take the eggs out of the woman, the way you just saw it on the monitor, put them in a tube, fertilize it by an electric or sometimes atomic way, and the hybrid grows in the tube until it is of term. No woman has ever given birth to a hybrid. This is beyond words, I said. And I thought most of the extraterrestrials would be like you. There are many species, said Sinharinanashamra. There are those humans call the Nordic. They look and behave much like humans, they are rather kindly, and other kinds are reasonable as well. But there are a lot of horrible species. The closer any species get to the demonic dimension, and particularly if they trade with them, the worse they become. Some look reptilian, some insect-like. Some eat human beings and other sentient species, in what we see as almost cannibalistic behavior. Some make sacrifices of sentient beings to their deities. The reptilians have a specialized digestive system. They eat solid food, but only suck blood through pores in their fingers. That is why some researchers on Earth connect the extraterrestrials with vampirism. The Greys sell them cattle blood, since the reptilians don't particularly care where the blood comes from. But anyway, are you ready for your field trip? Let's go and visit a Grey's lab. I thought I was ready. I thought I was tough, but what I saw on this field trip would remain with me for eons. Sinharinanashamra took me to her spaceship and informed me that the trip would be very short. She had been to this lab before and knew the conditions very well. Just before we landed, she pulled out a suit that was needed to protect me from any radiation. Apparently, for this trip, she needed no protection herself, but she could not tell as yet if I could tolerate such conditions or not, due to my human existence for the last 30 years. The suit was made of lightweight, soft metallic material that was actually rather comfortable and moved easily with me. Then, I put on a helmet, which was entirely transparent and allowed me perfect vision. We landed on a bleak field covered with some material that looked much like cement, grey and unpleasant, but with a smoother finish. Right before us was a huge building which looked like an ugly airport hangar, completely utilitarian without any ornamentation. The entire area around it was an empty prairie-like field, with stunted greyish vegetation, stretching into the horizon without any feature like a mountain or a city. The sky was grey but without clouds. We walked to a large door, tightly closed and made of metal. Sinharinanashamra put a hand on it, and it slid immediately to the side and allowed us to come in. "They know my handprint," she said to me. We entered a small hall, empty of any furniture, and from there, a door opened into a long corridor, brightly lit and painted white. On each side there were doors, also painted white, all closed, and it was entirely empty of any occupants. Sinharinanashamra led the way to one of the doors, and again placed her hand on it. The door slid open silently, and we entered an enormous room. It was so huge that I could not see the end of it, and had grey walls and a white ceiling. Round, bright lights of large circumference were placed in the ceiling, emanating a very strong illumination. The impression the room gave was that of a hospital ward, or a surgical hall. But there were no beds or operation tables, only large tanks containing some objects I could not as yet see. And while the place was scrupulously clean, the smell was nightmarish. I recognized the stench of formaldehyde, mingled with some other malodorous liquids. I was surprised I could smell anything through the helmet, but Sinharinanashamra explained that they deliberately made the suits and the helmets allow as much interaction with the environment as possible. "It smells like that because this is the warehouse where they keep all the spare parts," said Sinharinanashamra. "Come, look at this tank." We approached an enormous tank, transparent in the front parts and increasingly opaque as it extended further into the room. Inside floated a large number of severed arms and legs, all human. I recoiled in horror, but quickly recovered. We went to the next tank. It was arranged in the same manner, but inside floated severed heads and torsos. And so it went on, each tank filled with body parts, some even with full bodies. Smaller containers had interior organs, such as livers, hearts and some others I was not sure of. In addition, there were containers of blood, some red, some green. I already knew that the green blood became like that after preparation for sale to species that needed the adjustments. Suddenly I heard sounds of conversation, as if a group of people were approaching us from somewhere. The sounds were in a language I could not understand, and uttered in a metallic, screeching way that was almost mechanical. To me, it sounded demonic and inhuman. A group of 5 greys approached us. After what I have seen on the monitor, I was about to escape in terror, but the group bowed to Sinha Inanashamra and went on about their business. One of them approached a tank. He looked at what seemed to be a chart, like a hospital chart but in a language I could not understand, that was positioned above the tank, and just stared at it for a short while. A line on the chart lit up, and some equipment that was built above the tank came down, entered the tank, and using a robotic hand pulled out a specimen and placed it in a tube, along with some of the liquid. Then the robotic hand came up, moved forward, and handed the tube to the grey. The grey took the tube, looked at the chart, and the robotic hand withdrew. The grey took the tube to a wall and placed the tube against it. To my amazement, the wall sort of swallowed the tube and it disappeared. I looked at Sinha Inanashamra for explanation, and she said, "The walls are not solid. They look solid, of course, but really they are constructed of energy. The greys can move things back and forth, and even pass through it themselves. Some of the walls contain drawers where they place equipment." The other greys were all communicating among themselves in their demonic language, mostly ignoring us. "Let's go to the next room, where I can show you what they do with their specimens," said Sinha Inanashamra. We went to the wall, and she put her hand on it while holding me with her other hand, and I found myself passing through the wall as if it was made of thick molasses. The room we entered was designed just like the others, architecturally, but had work tables instead of tanks and containers. Hundreds of greys stood there, each at his table, doing things to the limbs, torsos, and blood. The smell of formaldehyde was so intense that I almost fainted. "Here," said Sinha Inanashamra. "Let me adjust the helmet so you don't have to smell the liquid." She did something at the back of the helmet, and I felt better. "And now, let's go to the area where they fit the spare parts on the creatures I have shown you, the ones that want to buy substance," said Sinha Inanashamra. We stepped into a third room, again through the wall, and this was a much smaller room. On the walls there were a number of monitors, just like the ones in Sinha Inanashamra's office, but much larger. Before each monitor stood a grey. We walked to one of them, and the grey bowed to Sinha Inanashamra and returned to his work. The grey adjusted something, and a swirling shadow attached to one leg appeared on the screen. Behind him were numerous other shadows. But the grey managed to separate the first creature from the others, with some walls of energy that looked like white fog. The creature waved desperately at the grey, who had before him a torso in liquid. A large robotic hand came from above the monitor, picked up the torso, and allowed the liquid to drain into its container. Then, he passed the torso through the screen, which now I realized was made of energy, like the wall, and placed it on the shadow. The shadow shivered, as if in pain, and I heard a deep moan or sigh as the torso attached itself to the swirling grey form. I had a glimpse of a shadowy face contorted in agony, but whether it was physical or mental pain I did not know. The shadow seemed utterly exhausted by the bizarre procedure and floated away. "What will happen to it now?" I asked. "It will be back again and again, and when the grey decide, they will give it more parts, allowing it to adjust and become more substantial." "Are there any of them ready to leave and serve the greys?" "Yes, but I think this would be too dangerous to visit in person. The demonic creatures don't have the restraints the greys have regarding the Anunnaki, and often they are too stupid and just lash out as soon as they are brought into our dimension. Their transport, therefore, is done in a different part of the lab, under tremendous precautions. Besides, we don't want to stay much longer, since I think you had seen enough for one day." I could not agree with her more, and we retraced our steps back to the spaceship. "Sometime I will show you how the creatures are taken out and put to service," said Sinha Inanashamra, "only not in person." This sounded good. I was already so shaken from my day's adventures, I did not think I could take much more instruction, nor did I have a wish to meet such creatures in person. But, of course, I knew that one day I would have to do exactly that.
In this green paradise, finally we're alone. Our hearts beat as one, a union fully grown. Victoria, my love, you've honored me so. With your family's blessing, together we'll go. In the light of our love, we become one. The dance of the stars, our journey's begun. Golden light surrounds, soft as a veil. In your arms, I know we'll never fail. There's a beauty in us words can't explain. A feeling so pure beyond joy or pain. Our lights intertwined, shining so bright. Together we soar in love's gentle flight. In the light of our love, we become one. The dance of the stars, our journey's begun. Golden light surrounds, soft as a veil. In your arms, I know we'll never fail. There's a beauty in us words can't explain. A feeling so pure beyond joy or pain. Our lights intertwined, shining so bright. Together we soar in love's gentle flight. In the light of our love, we become one. The dance of the stars, our journey's begun. Golden light surrounds, soft as a veil. In your arms, I know we'll never fail. Flowers fall like rain from the sky. Plumeria scent fills the night. In this world we've created, nothing's too far. With you by my side, we'll reach every star. In the light of our love, we become one. The dance of the stars, our journey's begun. Golden light surrounds, soft as a veil. In your arms, I know we'll never fail. What a life we found in this paradise. With you, my love, everything feels so right. Under blankets of flowers, we drift to sleep. In a world where our love runs deep. Close your eyes, feel the warmth in the air. Our spirits rise as our lights start to share. Golden glows like a soft flowing stream. In this moment we live a beautiful dream. When the lights begin to mingle, two hearts, one soul intertwined. In the brilliance we are single, but together the love defined. Bubbles of light, they float and they touch. Merging as one, we're feeling so much. Auroras dance in the night's gentle breeze. A union of love setting our hearts at ease. When the lights begin to mingle, two hearts, one soul intertwined. In the brilliance we are single, but together the love defined. Stars explode, a shower of grace. A light so pure it transcends this place. In this union, there's no fear or shame, just a love that forever remains. When the lights begin to mingle, two hearts, one soul intertwined. In the brilliance we are single, but together the love defined. In this glow, our souls combine. A love eternal, forever enshrined. The mingling of lights, a bond so true. I am forever, endlessly with you.